How do you know if you're ready to become a freelancer? This and more in this week's Q&A, coming up. Hello and welcome back to the Freelanceverse. I'm back with another Q&A for freelancers. This is number 3 already, I think. Yeah, it's been 2 months already. And once again, we are a much bigger community than we were last time. So of course, more questions. As I said, I want to do these every 2 months, but I also have questions to do them more often. So if you enjoy them, let me know in the comments. I can also do them monthly instead of bi-monthly. This time the questions are mostly from my previous Q&A video, so if you want to be included in the next one, make sure to ask your question under this video. Then it's the most likely that you will get featured. I think I have 5 or 6 depending on how long this takes to record. As always, I'm going to put them on screen for you and answer them afterwards. So let's get started. Question number 1 is from Marco. When you started, how much planning did you do? How did that look like? And did you manage to follow the planned trajectory? Thanks for the question. Very good question. Yes, I did do planning when I started. So I told this story now a few times on this channel. If you don't know, I started during my master's, so part-time basically, just to earn some money. And then this grew and grew next to my master, and it became a bigger thing than I ever expected. And then by the end of the masters, I had to make this big decision, right? I knew that I could make it, but I just didn't exactly know how. So I did make a plan then. What I did back then is I put a couple of A4 papers on the floor, well, not here, in my previous flat. And I made a big paper together, so I glued them all together. And then I wrote 3-year plan for French translations. Put year 1, year 2, year 3, and I put my goals in terms of revenue, my goals in terms of saving, but also my goals in terms of what I want to achieve next to the numbers, you know, how many clients, even how much I want to work in which year. So the first year was just full on, just work as much as you can, because didn't have any health issues then. I just, was full on go mode. And then second year was stabilization, and third year was basically enjoying. I wrote it, I think. In fact, I will see if I find it. I think it's up there somehow. Maybe I find it and I can insert it into this video. Would be kind of fun. And yes, I did manage to stick to the plan quite well. First year, I completely outperformed my plans, so I was way above them. And then actually I adapted a bit, year 2 and 3. But I shouldn't have adapted, because it turned out that I was pretty much in the realm where I planned before I started at the end of the 3 years. I definitely recommend this to you, even if you completely miss the mark. It doesn't matter. The point is that you plan it for yourself, you know, for your own motivation, for your own mental state, mental well-being. It's good to have something planned out for the future. Moving on, question number 2. So if you are a newbie, what would be the first thing you invest money in? Probst paid or a paid cut tool? And on a related note, how much do you think one should spend on the initial investments starting out as a freelance translator? Very good question, Adri. The good thing about freelance translating is that the overhead costs are very small, right? So basically anyone can start. You only need an internet connection and a laptop, and you're basically good to go. I would definitely not invest in a paid cut tool first before Probst. Because if you don't have any clients and you pay for a cut tool, it's not going to help you. You need jobs to work in the cut tool, right? So if it's between these two, definitely go for Probst first, and then once you're established, you have clients, go for a cut tool. You need both, kind of, in my opinion, but first this and then the other. On the related questions, how much you should spend, it's really up to you. I mean, what I would spend in the first year to start is probably pros. I would go for a website. I would, hosting a website basically. I would invest in a laptop, a good laptop that you can also travel with, and in an economic working space. So here a good chair is very important, and don't save on a good chair, because it's basically where you spend most of your time, right? Unless you also have a standing table. I don't know if you can see it back there. It's a bit of a mess now, but I also invested in that, and that's not a fancy table, right? This was, I don't know how expensive, but not much. So I alternate between sitting and standing, usually morning sitting when I'm a bit tired. I'm here at my desk with a second screen, also very important investment. So I would say all in all, if you also buy a laptop, probably invest between 1,000 and 2,000 euros. But of course, some of you already have these things, so they don't need to invest that much. But that would be the initial investment, which is very small to start a company, right? Realistically. Moving on to question number 3 is from Christelle. Hey Adrian, excellent and interesting video. Question. Your first tip is to surround yourself with like-minded people. Where and how did you find them? How do you communicate with them? A translator who works here in the US, where I live, told me that she only communicates with other translators by email, which I find quite sad, which is true. That's quite sad. I heard that most translators are paired with another translator working in a reverse language pair. Yes, I think you need another video. Yes, there is definitely a lot in this question. I will make videos on these topics. One about finding a network and one about having a proofreader pair, kind of. These will be 2 videos I will make, so stay tuned for that. I can answer this in short. Right now, with the pandemic going on, yes, most communication is online, unfortunately, but there are ways to circumvent that if there is nothing happening outside, right? What I did, I started my own meetup here in Brussels. So every Friday I go out and meet other freelancers and I work with them in a cafe. I limited it to 7 people per week because otherwise you would have to kind of have a deal with the cafe owner. 7 people is okay to work. So usually we are 5, 6, 7 people. And you meet very interesting people. I can only recommend this to you. If you visit meetup.com and just look for your location, there are so many things on there. Also, maybe language exchanges where you can meet other language lovers if you are one. And in terms of proofreading, yes, especially if you work with direct clients, you should have your own proofreader. Usually that's someone you meet along the way. For me, it's a friend from university that I share work with, and we work quite well together. Yeah, and if you can really trust them, they give you work when they are overwhelmed and you give them equally as much when you have too much, and you can proofread each other's work. When you work for an agency, you don't really need that because there's usually a step in between. So you do either the translation workflow or the proofreading, and then it goes to another freelancer who does the other workflow. Then you don't really need it. Since I work mostly with agencies, my workflow is mostly alone. Hope this answers your question. Moving on, at which point in life did you realize that freelancing was a realistic path to take in life? And were you also in the situation at some point where you had to take a leap of faith? So this ties in a bit to the first question from Marco, right? My leap of faith was, I had 2 of them basically. One was before I moved to the Netherlands. I had a stable job in Zurich. I was okay, doing fine. But I had this situation in my life going on where I needed to change something. And there was a big decision moving to the Netherlands and do the master's there. This was definitely a leap of faith. I didn't know what would happen. I definitely didn't know I would end up in Brussels 5 years later. And my second one was, as I mentioned before, after the master's, I had the decision to make. Do I put all my eggs in one basket and go for translation? I had about 60% of work then, so I knew I could make it, but still it was terrifying because then I didn't have my arrangements that I have now, where I have constant work coming in every day. And then it was really just still like going out, finding jobs every day, you know, and that's a different mindset, but luckily it worked out. We have time for one more question. It is from Eric. How do you handle clients that hire you for editing a translation for cheap, since it's editing? Already an issue there, and deliver you something machine translated. Some translators explicitly mention that they don't take that kind of job, handling machine translations. Would you abide by the same philosophy? Or would you just charge more or even your full translation rate? Okay, so there are a few things in this question. So he asks if clients hire you for editing because it's cheap. Editing shouldn't be cheaper than translation. So that's all about your pricing, right? Even though your editing rate is lower than your translation rate, your output is much higher than for translation, right? You can edit much faster than you can translate, and this has to equal out. So it shouldn't be cheaper for anyone. That's the first thing. And the second thing, you have to be careful. Editing and post-editing are 2 different things, right? If someone hires you for editing, it is assumed that a human translated the output. If someone hires you for post-editing, that means that a machine produced the output. And it's becoming more and more frequent, of course, nowadays. I'm not completely against it. I'm just always tell people to be aware of it and know your pricing well. What I do is I always charge by the hour if I do post-editing. I don't do it that often, but if I do it by the hour, because then I'm not fussed. Like if the output is terrible, then it just takes me much longer to do it, and I still get paid well enough. Editing is different. You can't judge that by the word because it's assumed that a human did it. And if it's really bad, you can still go back to the client and tell him, look, the quality is really bad, I can't do that. You need to pay me more. Some clients even make a distinction between editing and proofreading, where proofreading would only be just orthographic and grammatical style changes. No style changes, only orthographic and grammatical changes, whereas editing also includes the style and checking the references, etc. So really make sure you know what you have to do for your clients, because some words can be ambiguous and are not always clear. Okay, that's all for me for this month's Q&A. Make sure to ask your questions in the comments below. So in end of March, beginning of April, basically, I will do my next one. Hopefully with 1,000 subscribers by then. Make sure to scroll down and subscribe and like the video. It helps out a lot. And yeah, I see you next week with another video. Bye bye.